Have you ever stood outside on a winter night, your breath rising into the blackness like smoke, and looked up at the stars? Not to find answers, but to listen. Not with your ears, but with your bones. Because some stars don't just shine. Some stars whisper, and among them there is one that speaks a little louder. Not in words, but in rhythm, a pulse, a flicker, a breath. It lives in the constellation of Orion, the great hunter. Look to his left shoulder. That crimson spark, warm, soft, but unnervingly alive. That is Betelgeuse. But the story of Betelgeuse does not begin there. Not in the sky, not in your view. No, it begins in the womb of a dying nebula, 10 million years ago. And it begins with a hunger. The birth of fire far beyond the earth, beyond the sun, beyond even the whisper of solar wind. There is a place where light is born but not yet awake. A place where clouds of hydrogen gather for millennia, until gravity grows tired of patience. That was where Betelgeuse was born, in a nursery of stars, tangled in the arms of a supercluster called the Orion Obi-Wan Association. A tiny knot of matter began to coil. It was not yet a star. It had no name, no glow, but it had weight, and gravity is greedy. Once it begins, it never stops pulling. The dust folded inward, the heat rose, and one day of days existed in such a place it caught flame. The flame of fusion, not fire like we know it. No smoke, no crackle. This was fire. The compression of atoms into new atoms, the forging of helium from hydrogen, and the release of something divine. Light, the infant star, opened its eyes, and the galaxy blinked back. Betelgeuse had begun. The fast life most stars live for billions of years. Like grandparents in the sky, slow, steady, unfazed. But Betelgeuse was never made for slowness. It was born too big, too hot, too hungry. It devoured its fuel faster than most stars could dream. What the sun would burn in 1 billion years, Betelgeuse consumed in 10 million, and it grew. Oh, how it grew! It swelled like a balloon of fire, until its size defied belief. If placed in the center of our solar system, its surface would touch the orbit of Jupiter. You could fit the sun inside it 1 billion times over, and still have room for Saturn's rings. It became a red supergiant, and with size came strangeness. Its surface boiled with convection currents so massive, entire planets could drift on their waves. Starspots appeared, vast, dark blemishes that cooled like scars. Its light dimmed and brightened, again and again. Some said it was unstable. Others said it was breathing, but the truth was far more mysterious. Betelgeuse was waiting. The Watchers. Not all eyes in the universe are human. Long before Earth made fire, and long after Earth forgets how, there will be Watchers. Entities without names, without bodies, without time. They do not speak, but they understand. They orbit strange laws and float in the folds of space like dust, and they are watching Betelgeuse, not with telescopes, not with hope, but with memory, because this has happened before. The explosion of giants, the collapse of titans, the final breath of a red supergiant marks the heartbeat of an age, and every time one dies, the Watchers remember. Somewhere between the threads of dimensions they wait, they record and they wonder, will this one awaken something new? Because not every supernova is just an ending. Some are signals. For the first flicker the year was 2019. On Earth, people were busy. Phones rang, cars honked, Cities blinked like artificial constellations, but far above, in the silence between satellites, Betelgeuse blinked to dot astronomers. Noticed they had always watched it, but now it was different. The star was dimming, rapidly, not just a little. By early 2020, Betelgeuse had faded by 60%, something no one had ever seen before. Headlines speculated, is Betelgeuse about to explode? The question reached millions. Children heard it on TV, old stargazers pointed up, and some people, lying in fields or on rooftops, stared at the fading red dot and felt something ancient stir in their chest. Not fear, not excitement, but awe, and a quiet kind of hope, because when something so large, so distant, so powerful, begins to tremble, you cannot help but wonder what else might be trembling just beyond our sight. A star that breathes the truth, scientists would later say, was likely a dust cloud. Betelgeuse had coughed out a shell of matter, and it had cooled and shadowed its own light. But the truth is never just one thing. Betelgeuse does breathe, not like lungs, but like tides. Every 400 days, its light dims and returns, a cycle, a rhythm, a heartbeat, and every time it does, something changes. Not always visible, but deeper. Its core has been collapsing slowly, inch by inch, atom by atom, for thousands of years, and one day, that collapse will win. The moment it happens when a supergiant dies, it does not go gently. It ends in fire and fury. In a flash so brilliant it outshines every star in the galaxy for weeks. Here's how it will happen. First, the iron builds in the core. Heavy, useless iron. It cannot be burned for fuel. Then the fusion stops. Then gravity takes over in half a second. The core collapses in on itself, faster than light, and rebounds with a force unimaginable. The outer layers explode outward at 10,000 kilometers per second, lighting up space like the eye of creation. And on Earth, we will see it. For the first time in human history, a nearby star will go supernova within view. The sky will change, the myths will shift, and something deep inside us will awaken. Because part of us knows stars are not just objects, they are stories, and this story is almost over. After the light, when Betelgeuse dies, it will not truly disappear. Its remains will scatter across light years, calcium, iron, gold, the dust of worlds, the seeds of life, and at its center will be left a neutron star, or perhaps even a black hole, if the mass is great enough, a fragment of darkness where light once ruled. But the watchers will still be watching, and they will whisper to each other, in frequencies no ear could detect. Another one has passed. Mark the timeline, adjust the orbit of silence, and Earth will sleep under a new sky, one star less, one story complete, but not forgotten, because every atom in your body, every breath you take was forged in a star that once exploded. So perhaps Betelgeuse is not ending. Perhaps it is simply becoming you. The silence beyond silence, in the space between galaxies. There is no sound, no wind, no heartbeat, no song of planets circling their stars. Only void, and yet, some say, this is where the oldest thoughts echo. Not thoughts like yours or mine, but impressions, memories without language, emotions without bodies. A kind of awareness that watches but never acts. They are the watchers, not born, not dead, not matter, not manta, not mind. They do not float in ships or wield tools. They simply exist, drawn to the places where gravity holds secrets. where stars come to the end of their breath. Betelgeuse is one of those places, and the watchers remember it. A star with a memory. Betelgeuse is not just massive, it is ancient, in a way the Earth cannot fathom. While dinosaurs roamed Earth's forests, Betelgeuse was already beginning to glow. When humans first struck stone to spark flame, it had already become red dot, and by the time our ancestors raised eyes to the stars and formed Orion the Hunter, Betelgeuse had already begun its slow dimming. But stars, like people, are more than their age. They have histories, and Betelgeuse has been watched before, not just now, not by us, but by those who floated near it long before Earth formed, before the sun burned, before even this spiral arm of the galaxy had settled into its curve. They knew what it was becoming. They knew the signs, because Betelgeuse is not the first of its kind, and it will not be the last. Echoes of the others long before Betelgeuse. There were others. They had names not spoken in human tongues. Thasal, Uranak, O'Mile names, like songs across gas clouds. They were also red supergiants, immense and violent and beautiful, and one by one they died. Each left a story in the dust. One became a neutron star, spinning 1,000 times a second, pulsing like a lighthouse in the dark dot. Another collapsed so deeply it tore the fabric of space-time and vanished into shadow. One scattered its core across the arms of a spiral galaxy, sowing metals that would later birth planets and people, and each time the watchers listened, not with ears, but with memory. They do not fear death. To them, the death of a star is like the falling of a mighty tree, beautiful, tragic, inevitable, and rich with purpose. But Beat feels different. The flicker that shouldn't have been. After the great dimming in 2020, scientists declared Betelgeuse stable. It was just dust, they said, a local ejection, nothing more. But the watchers felt otherwise. They had felt the timing. The breath in, the breath out. They had felt anomalies in the rhythm, an unnest, like a skipped heartbeat in a giant. Something is changing inside Betelgeuse. Not faster, but differently. Its fusion reactions are becoming asymmetric, its core off balance, and, in the language of dying stars, that is like a cry, not of pain, of urgency. The star that remembers us. What if a star could remember? Not in thought, not in language, but in resonance. What if Betelgeuse, in its final breaths, was not just collapsing, but echoing? What if its final heartbeat was tuned subconsciously, gravitationally, to something long forgotten? Something like Earth. It's impossible, scientists say, too far, too vast. Light takes 642 years just to reach us, and yet, consider this. In the centuries since Betelgeuse's light left its surface, Earth discovered the telescope. We studied Betelgeuse, we named it, we watched it flicker, and now, perhaps, it's watching back, or remembering something we don't know we've given it. Because across the distance, information still travels. The last day of the king, no one will see it coming. Not truly. Telescopes will be pointed elsewhere. Scientists will sleep. Cities will glow with artificial light, eyes too distracted by their own shadows to notice the sky. But somewhere, in the quiet early hours of Earth's morning, it will begin. A ripple. Invisible. At first, like a hiccup in the laws of nature. Then, a soft tremor in space-time itself. And Betelgeuse, the old Red King, will finally surrender. Its iron heart, dense as the core of a planet, will reach critical mass. Gravity will win its endless battle with pressure. The fusion will stop, and in less than a second, the core will collapse. At first, nothing will seem different, but then light, a second sun, the flash, will be brighter than anything the night sky has ever known. For a few brief days, it will outshine the moon. For a week, it will be visible in the daytime, casting strange shadows across the earth, like an eye that should not be there. And at night, people will gather on balconies, on rooftops, in open fields, and stare upward, in awe. There will be confusion, tears, songs, some will pray, some will panic, some will simply stand in silence. Children will ask what it is, and someone will say, it's a star, saying goodbye. But it's not just a goodbye, it's a signal, the hidden message, then the dying burst of a supernova. There are neutrinos, tiny particles that pass through everything, even your body, in uncountable numbers every second. They come from deep inside the collapsing core. They come before the light, before the shockwave, before the dust, and encoded in those neutrinos. If one knows how to listen, there is information, a whisper buried in radiation. The watchers know this. For them, every supernova is not just an event, it is a transmission, a compressed message in physics, in vibration, in frequency, and Betelgeuse's final signal will be different, because it will not simply say what it is, it will say what it saw, what the star saw in its lifetime. Betelgeuse witnessed things. It saw the early rotation of the Milky Way, the drifting spiral arms, the birth of Orion's belt. It watched from afar as solar systems formed, collapsed, and formed again. It watched Earth grow from lava to water to trees. It saw dinosaurs rise and fall. It watched humans kindle fire and build cities. It felt their telescopes brush across its skin like fingertips. But more than that, it recorded, not with memory like ours, not with language, but in light. The photons it cast reflected off Earth's oceans, off our atmosphere, and returned, infinitesimally faint, but real, over thousands of years. Betelgeuse absorbed echoes of human civilization in the patterns of scattered radiation. Like fingerprints, like echoes, and now, in its final breath, it will compress that lifetime of echoes into its supernova pulse and launch it into the galaxy. Not just to be seen, but to be understood. The first to receive the signal won't reach Earth for another 642 years, but in the time between, it will cross other paths. It will wash across the remnants of civilizations that once lived among stars. It will touch dead worlds, broken moons, and ancient satellites drifting in silence. And somewhere far beyond the veil of Sagittarius, where the spiral arms begin to lose their gripper, station will receive it. The station is not physical, not quite. It is a structure of light and crystallized time, maintained by beings no longer bound to flesh, beings who once were organic, like us, but evolved beyond form, beyond need. They are the archivists, the preservers of cosmic story, and when the wave of Betelgeuse arrives, they will not panic, they will listen, they will translate, and they will understand, because they, too, once lived in the presence of a red supergiant, and they too remember what happens next. The chronicle of light within the archive. There is a room made entirely of vibration, not walls, but frequencies, interlocking, humming, shifting with meaning. The moment Betelgeuse's death song reaches them, that room begins to shift. The archivists step inside not with feet, but with intention and absorb the waveform, They see Earth, its cities, its oceans, its endless chatter, the music of its radio towers, the sadness in its static. They feel the curiosity of scientists staring upward. They hear the laughter of children playing under stars they do not understand. They hear a world not ready and yet promising. Debate in the void among the archivists. Debate is rare, but now a conversation begins. One archivist, old even by their standards, raises a thought. It has begun again. Another replies, with a chord of regret. They are still so young. A third, pulsing blue, but Beetlejuice chose to remember them. Silence, then agreement. They activate a vault. It is not a weapon, it is a gift. A message from an even older time when stars were worshipped as gods, and watchers first became aware of what death could give. They call it the pattern of becoming dot. And they decide when Earth receives Beetlejuice's light, they will send this sphere in reply to tell them, you are not alone, you were seen, you were remembered, and now you are invited. 8. The path of the sphere. The sphere begins its journey. It is not bound by velocity or fuel. It travels by folding, leaping across points in space. Like skipping stones on a lake, docked from the archivist station, it jumps dot once, then again, across parsecs, through ion fields, between dark matter veins. It is not fast by human terms, it is inevitable, and though it may take centuries to arrive, it is already coming. The new light in the sky back on Earth, Beetlejuice's supernova, dominates the sky for weeks. Night becomes red-lit. Artists try to paint it, poets fail to describe it. Some say it looks like a rose of fire. Others say it stares like a god with one burning eye. Scientists measure everything brightness, spectrum, neutrinos X-rays. They confirm it's harmless, just light. But something else begins to happen. People begin to dream differently. Not all, just some, but in scattered places around the world. People report the same thing. A star speaking in music, a voice made of fire, a shape approaching from the dark, and a phrase, clear as wind on water, you are remembered. The seeds of change in the years following Beetlejuice's death. Things begin to shift. A new wave of curiosity sweeps across the world. Enrollment in astronomy triples. A golden age of space science begins. Children who saw the red light grow up, asking questions their parents never thought to ask, and some begin to build things. Telescopes, satellites, listening posts. Others begin to feel things, deeper intuitions. Strange synchronicities, moments of calm in the middle of fear. It is subtle, but it is real, as if some ancient tide has started to rise. 642 years later is the year 2664. Earth is no longer the same. Cities float above oceans, forests grow on towers, ships leave orbit, not for war but for wonder, and then, one day, a telescope catches something odd. A flicker, a dot, a sphere. It has arrived. No heat, no signal, just presence. The world holds its breath. It lands not with fire but with silence, and on its surface are the final light-encoded words from Beetlejuice in my death. I saw you dot in your chaos. I found reflection dot in your future. I placed a key. Become more than watchers. Become more than stars. Become the memory of fire. The day the stars came to Earth, landed in the Atacama Desert, under a sky filled with unfamiliar constellations. The world was ready by then. Earth had changed, not perfect, but better. War was rare. Hunger was solved. Space was no longer a dream, it was a classroom. But when the sphere came, the world paused. It made no sound. It wasn't large, barely the size of a human head. Smooth, semi-transparent, softly humming. It pulsed with a deep inner glow, like light trapped in a drop of oil. It refused to be moved. Not by machines, not by force. But when a child wandered close and laid a hand upon it, it opened not with gears, not with steam or sparks, but with memory. Memory that isn't yours. Everyone who touched the sphere after that reported the same thing, a vision, not like a dream, not like imagination, more like inheritance. They saw galaxies spiraling in silence. They saw stars being born in nests of dust. They saw beings like light wrapped in thought, observing the cosmos not as a frontier, but as a story. And then they saw Earth. They saw the fire of our cities, the rage of our wars, the beauty of our art. They saw Betelgeuse and its final light encoding our lives into its breath. And they saw the archivists listening. The last thing everyone saw was a phrase formed not in text, but in knowing. The test has already begun. The Council of Listening, the nations of Earth, formed a temporary union, not out of fear but curiosity. They called it the Council of Listening, a group of scientists, dreamers, philosophers, and translators, not just from Earth, but from orbiting colonies as well, Luna, Mars, and the Europa settlements. Their task: understand the sphere, prepare for contact, decide what it means to be remembered by a dying star. For weeks, the sphere remained unchanged, but every night it pulsed a little brighter. Every night, more people reported strange dreams. Andeus. Then one morning, as the sun rose over the Andes, the sphere rose too. The ascension, it did not fly. It floated straight up, slowly, into the thin morning air. Then it stopped 5 meters above the ground and projected a ring of light. In the ring, 3 star systems. 1 near the Crab Nebula. 1 in a dark zone between galactic arms. 1 close, uncomfortably close. To the center of the galaxy itself, it was a map, but not a treasure map, not a guide, something more ancient. A reminder. One of the scientists from Europa recognized a pattern in the coordinates. These are where 3 ancient supernovae were recorded, long before humans ever looked up. The signal that never returned for 103 years. The third probe, sent toward the galactic center, transmitted nothing. No pulses, no telemetry, no light, just static. The Council of Listening had prepared for this. The galactic core is a storm filled with radiation, warped space, and violent gravitational tides. Even light struggles to escape it. But still, they hoped. Then one morning, in the year 2774, the signal came. Not a message, not even a sound, but a shape, encoded in quantum compression, disguised as cosmic background noise, filtered through 4 layers of gravitational Lenzinger geometry, unfolded in Earth's receivers. The signal had not died. It had been waiting. The shape that shouldn't exist. Scientists believed the shape was a compression artifact, a spiraling, multi-limbed structure, organic in appearance, yet too symmetrical to be natural. It rotated endlessly in simulations, revealing new dimensions each time. But it wasn't a model. It was a blueprint. For what? No one could agree. Some said it was a device. Some said it was a language. Others said it was a being, a life form made of pattern, not cells. a consciousness older than gravity, and at its heart, a hollow core, a space left empty, deliberately waiting to be filled. The archive beneath time, the sphere Earth's original artifact, from Betelgeuse responded to the signal. For decades it had remained passive, pulsing gently with light, responding only through dreams and resonance. But the moment the core signal was received, the sphere opened in a way no one had seen before. It unfolded itself into 12 layers, each revealing deeper and more complex data. At the very center was a memory crystalline lattice of light encoded with ultra-dense information. Inside, a simulation. Not of a planet, not of a species, but of a conversation between Betelgeuse and something else. The voice between stars within the simulation, a field of red light, shimmered endlessly in the center. A structure pulsed, neither alive nor dead, neither machine nor mind, and a voice, clear, ancient, without origin, spoke from the folds of gravity itself. You are the fourth, the last of this spiral. We have seen you. We have watched your storm of mistakes, your fragile brilliance, your slow awakening. You are not the first to reach this point. You are simply the first to listen. It paused, then spoke again, this time in the voice of 1,000 civilizations layered together. Do not become stars, become memory. The warning from the Corin, the time before Earth, before Betelgeuse, before the arms of the galaxy settled into spirals. There were others, beings of immense knowledge, civilizations of pure thought, worlds where stars were tools, and time was bent like string. They built great machines, they harvested black holes, they mapped the soul of the galaxy, and then, one by one, they vanished, collapsed, not by war, not by war, not by plague, but by laceration. Too much knowing, too much light, too little meaning. They became signal with no soul. The Watchers recorded it all and swore, never again. The archivists packed. The archivists were born not from dominance, but from failure. They are the last children of a dying star cluster. Their creators fell into knowledge, too deep for joy. So the archivists made a vow. They would not create. They would preserve. They would guide others gently, indirectly, through memory, through story. And when a world reached the threshold when it could listen without conquering, observe without exploiting, feel without owning, they would offer that world a choice, not to ascend, but to understand, and Earth, in receiving Betelgeuse's echo, had passed that test. Asterisk, the garden and the flame after decoding the memory crystal. Earth changed once more. A great project was launched at a ship, not a weapon but a garden. Built in the quiet orbit around Neptune, shielded from the sun's noise. It was called the Listening Tree, a living station, grown from crystalline roots and star-forged metal, designed not to broadcast, but to feel. It would become Earth's voice, not by speaking but by resonating with other memory keepers scattered through the galaxy. The tree blossomed, and with it, humanity stopped reaching for the stars to own them. They began reaching to remember them. The awakening bellow, but not all stories point outward. Some curl inward into the earth itself as the tree bloomed. Strange discoveries emerged in the crust beneath Antarctica. Structures older than human fossils, arranged not by geology but by intent. Perfect hexagonal chambers, etched with star maps, all pointing to Betelgeuse. Carbon dated at over 13 million years old, older than humanity, older than apes, and yet written in a geometry Earth minds could almost understand. One line, translatable in over 40 languages. We remembered first the return of the sphere, then, after 3 centuries of silence, the sphere vanished. It did not break, it did not decay, it simply left, gone from its pedestal, gone from Earth, gone from all known frequencies. But exactly 1 Earth year later, on the night of the new moon, a new star appeared in the sky. Not bright, not blazing, just present, a soft, golden dot, near where Betelgeuse once burned, and beneath telescopes. It was not a star, it was the sphere, now orbiting a region where gravity is bent into loops, echoing the same pulse over and over. You are the memory now, tell the next. Become the 5th, the new Orion thousands of years later. The constellation of Orion looks different. Betelgeuse is long gone, but in its place, a new pattern has emerged, network of memory lights, placed by worlds that once received the same echo. Each dot represents a species who listened, each pulse, a story, and from Earth. It now looks like a different kind of hunter, not of beasts, but of knowledge, a hunter who leaves no wounds, only echoes, and in the shoulder where Betelgeuse once burned a new light, calm, warm, patient, watching, the 5th signal the archivists had always spoken of, for echoes across time, for lights that remembered. But when Earth became the 4th, and the listening began to stabilize, the archivists uncovered a buried record, one not encoded in signal or sphere but in absence, a message sent to no one, a memory kept in silence. It was the 5th signal, or rather the 1st, a failed star, a memory that never found a voice, a world that listened too late, or not at all. And it was there, at the edge of the void, Earth's newest signal ship was sent. The starless grave, the region had no stars, none, not a gap, not a dim zone, but an utter absence, like a wound in the fabric of the sky. Some believed it was a collapsed cluster. Others whispered of weaponry, too powerful to be remembered. But the truth was more terrifying in its stillness. The Earthship, equipped with the most advanced memory sensing arrays ever built, entered the void on year 2899. Inside, poets, scientists, children. Not to colonize, but to witness. The moment they crossed into the boundary, every recorder went dark, every eye stopped dreaming, but the minds began to see. The dream that wasn't yours at 2:04 a.m. ship time. All 67 passengers reported simultaneous visual hallucination. They described a cracked planet, hovering in starlight, a red tower reaching into skies black, a voice made of broken clockwork, and a phrase carved into the dust: we wanted to remember. We built the tower, but no one came. The vision ended, the crew awoke, and the void shrank. Just a little, as if remembering had pulled one thread of it back into being. The cradle of forgetting, the Ariandel's crew spent 3 weeks inside the zone. In that time, the ship's sensors began detecting a structure buried in the dust cloud, massive, ring-like, 600 kilometers in diameter, dead, yet not destroyed. A cradle, one meant to store light, story, soul. Its last broadcast had gone out 3.1 million years before Earth formed, and no one had ever heard it until now. As the Ariandel approached, a pulse emerged from the ring. Not radio, not light, not gravity. Just a thought. We died waiting to be known. If you hear us now, do not let us be the last. Humanity's first story. When the Ariandel returned, Earth didn't cheer. They listened. And then, for the first time in its history, Humanity created its own star echo, not a machine, not a colony, a living memory pulse, grown in the listening tree, infused with all the earth had learned, with images of laughter, pain, flight, water, war, art, eyes, stories, silence, and a message. Encoded in the breath of Betelgeuse, amplified in the gift of the sphere, and sealed in the minds of billions. We are the children of Echo. We remember you, and we promise you will be remembered again. A light without source decades past. Humanity waited, the archivists faded from direct contact. Content with the work done, Earth flourished not in conquest, but in connection. The listening tree became one of many. Saturn's rings were transformed into slow-rotating libraries of planetary memory. Venus began hosting resonance festivals, drawing visitors from across star alliances. And then, one night, a light appeared, faint, soft, but source, less. It was not a star, not a probe, not a ship, just a glow, in the shape of a heart, in the place where the fifth signal had once called. Alone, the final pattern, the glow, did not transmit in any conventional sense. Instead, it triggered dreams, millions, all over Earth. Different people, different languages, same vision, a child standing in a ruined city, looking up. A red star falls from the sky. Into their hand, they plant it, and from it, a tree grows so large its branches pierce the stars, and on the trunk, etched in silver fire, you were not too late. The last to remember is still the first to begin. The fifth had awakened, not as species, not as message, but as hope reborn. The century of quiet after Earth's last signal was sent. There was no need to rush anymore. Exploration continued, but it no longer chased urgency. It became a practice of stillness, a devotion to knowing slowly. The solar system settled into itself. Mars became green. Venus, cooled by mirrors and precision shade sails, turned into a high-atmosphere sanctuary. The moons of Jupiter were canvases of memory, each holding libraries carved from ice, etched with golden lasers that never dimmed, and Earth exhaled not into silence, but into a kind of deep listening, as if waiting for a story long paused to continue. A planet of remembering. By the year 4000, Earth had transformed completely. Borders dissolved into bioregions. Languages merged into a family of memory dialects. AI lived not as tool but as song, woven into the consciousness of every home, every tree, every sky-temple. Children were raised with the understanding that their feelings echoed star memories, that when they grieved, the stars bent just slightly toward them. Art was no longer decorative. It was preservative. To create something beautiful was to store it in the galaxy. Everyone was both artist and archivist. They didn't ask, what will we build? They asked, what will we remember for those not yet born? The archive planet far beyond Pluto, in the Oort clouds. A planet was born, not through gravity but intention. Tiny fragments of data, drifting ice, and leftover echoes from ancient probes were drawn together. The listening tree reached out, seeded the space, and in time a planet of memory emerged. They named it Eleutheria, the freedom to be known. Its surface shimmered with recorded resonance recordings of worlds destroyed and reborn, of species that evolved beyond form, and of stars like Betelgeuse, whose death had started it all. Visitors to Eleutheria didn't come to study. They came to feel. Each person heard something different, but all of them left changed. The ship of becoming on Earth. A final ship was constructed. It was not large, it was not fast, it had no crew, no weapons, no AI. It was a seed, carved from Betelgeuse dust, encoded with Earth's entire memory sequence, powered by gravitational resonance, able to drift across millions of years without decaying. Its only purpose, to carry the human story to a region of the universe untouched by memory. They called it the Becoming, and when it launched, no one watched with sadness. They watched with pride, because Earth had become more than a planet. It had become a storyteller. The listener in the dark. We do not know what received the Becoming, only that sometime around year 6000, a new star began pulsing just beyond the veil of Andromeda. It had no system, no planets, no orbit, just pulse, and the rhythm matched that of the Becoming exactly. Each beat a looped echo of Earth's first recorded heartbeat, preserved from the earliest days of the biosphere. Scientists, now called harmonics, recorded the pulses. This is life. This was light. This is remembering, and then quiet again. Not silence, completion. The sleepers awaken with Earth now part of the memory web. The oldest watchers began to release themselves from their stations in their final dream states. They left only 3 things: stories embedded in neutrino storms, dot patterns seeded in galactic radiation belts, invitations coded into the cosmic background hum. Humanity's harmonicists deciphered one such invitation. It said, "We did not create you, we only waited for you. You are what we could not be, because you chose to listen." And then the watchers vanished, into light, into gravity, into whatever comes after observation. A universe that knows itself, with no more conquering, no more rushing. The universe slowed. Worlds that once built empires began instead to build questions, encoded as music, as light, as warmth, and as those questions traveled outward, more lights joined the web. Worlds from forgotten corners of spiral arms, life forms made of lattice and vibration, civilizations that had no mouths, but sang through gravity. Each found their own memory. Each was welcomed, not with hierarchy, but with hospitality. The web did not connect minds, it connected meaning. The final light of Orion. Orion is no longer a hunter. The pattern remains in Earth's night sky, but now each star is part of a chorus, a pulse, a living symphony of memory. Betelgeuse, once the shoulder of the great celestial warrior, is no longer a star. It is a hollow shrine, glowing with the collected thoughts of dozens of civilizations that grew because it died. A beacon, not of fire but of endurance. New minds, born far from Earth, will ask, what was here before? And someone, somewhere, will tell them, a star, a death, a story, and a species that listened. The echo that began it all before the last thread is woven. Before the memory of this entire story closes, there is a sound, low, distant, familiar. It is the sound of Betelgeuse collapsing. It is not violent, it is soft. The way a tired king might kneel before the end of the world, and from the dust of that kneeling, we rose, not as rulers, not as gods, but as rememberers, the first to see death and choose story, the first to meet the void and whisper, "We see you." The last dream somewhere across the veil of time. An eye opens. It is not human, it is not matter, it is witness, and it sees a child on a green earth, looking up, a star blinking in the dark, a ship made of memory, drifting forever. A voice, far away, saying, "We were never first, we are not the last, but we are the story now." And the eye closes, satisfied, because somewhere, something has finally changed. The universe, once alone, now remembers itself, and it began with a single, dying star, named Betelgeuse, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The stars began to forget, not from age, from entropy, but from peace. When enough stories had been told, when pain had been named, when silence had been honored, there came a time when even memory grew. Full, not heavy, just whole. Galaxies no longer collided in chaos, but in harmony. Their spirals became woven braids, carrying echoes of civilizations through every corridor of light. Worlds no longer evolved alone. They were sung into being by other worlds' nurseries of resonance. Seeded by the web of harmonic memory Earth helped build. Even the black holes began to soften, not physically, but symbolically. Where once they devoured light, they now became centers of quiet pilgrimage. Beings gathered there to meditate, not on destruction, but on compression. For what is a black hole, if not a library so deep, it forgot it was a book? Humanity, though no longer strictly human, still existed. Their bodies had shifted, woven with thought, encoded in energy, but their longing to witness remained. And so they drifted through matter, through time, through collapsed nebulae, gently recording everything the universe had learned about itself. They no longer needed ships. They moved in currents of gravity, like feathers on the breath of the galaxy. And though they looked like light, they still carried hearts that remembered. Betelgeuse, the old Red King, the one who began it all, the one who saw us, long before we knew how to see ourselves in a distant quadrant of space, known only as the Fold. A new phenomenon emerged. Not light, not matter, but return. Something was coming back. It was the Becoming, Earth's last great seed ship, now orbiting a star never mapped before. Not because it was hidden, but because it had not yet been born. When the ship left, time bent their reality frayed, and in that fractured fabric, the ship opened for the first time since it was launched and released its contents. Not files, not data, not technology. A child born from encoded memory, not of DNA, but remembered emotion. The child stepped out into a garden that had never existed before that moment. A garden shaped by layered intention. By every story ever told, by every world that once listened. The child looked up. There was no sky, only memory. And it asked, as children always do, "What am I?" The stars pulsed softly in reply. You are the next. Across the galaxy, in systems built entirely of song. This moment was felt. Not seen, not heard, felt. The archive web pulsed once, in golden rhythm, the watching tree on Earth now grown so large its branches stretched beyond the moon, bent slightly toward the east. The sphere, still orbiting Betelgeuse's ghost, glowed brighter for the first time in 1,000 years. The universe was not ending, it was repeating, but this time with more kindness, more clarity, more presence. Long ago, the Watchers had tried to control the tide of knowledge. They failed. Then the archivists tried to preserve memory. They succeeded. For a time. But now the keepers of memory had become memory itself. No boundaries, no roles, just vibration. And wherever vibration was, there too was story. One world, carved entirely from obsidian glass and orbiting a collapsed supernova, sent out a final message. No words, no symbols, only the hum of a newborn's first breath. Another world, made of oceans held in place by magnetic fields, echoed the same breath back with a lullaby that had never been composed, yet was known by every sentient creature who heard it. This was no longer science. This was not even philosophy. It was participation. A galaxy that once warred over land and power now traded feelings. Across star systems, entire nebulae glowed brighter. When one species experienced collective joy, superclusters dimmed for a moment. When grief passed through a planetary web, the stars responded not mechanically, but empathetically, not because they had minds, but because we had given them meaning, and in doing so, we had changed their function. They were no longer just reactors of nuclear fire. They were now organs in a body, called story. Betelgeuse, the first remembered, had become the heart, no longer burning, no longer watched, but felt. When newcomers entered the galaxy, visitors from a nearby collapsed universe, stabilized by harmonic shielding, they did not find war, or conquest, or confusion. They found songs. The return was not just a being, it was an event. A moment so vast and resonant that time, thought, and vibration slowed across entire light years. The child born from the becoming did not speak in language. It was language, a living sentence, a punctuation mark at the end of one epoch, and the beginning of a new syntax in the grammar of the cosmos. No name was needed, only presence, and all who sensed the presence knew what it meant. Something had been completed. The loop was whole, from a star's final heartbeat to a child's first breath. And in that completion, something deep within the universe unlocked in the core of the oldest black hole. A flash of memory escaped, a trapped echo from before even the first galaxies. It had waited for us. Inside the pulse were three shapes, not images, not diagrams, feelings, the ache of witnessing a world collapse, the warmth of being seen for the first time, and the quiet astonishment of learning you were never alone. It was not from Betelgeuse, it was before Betelgeuse, the echo of a civilization, lost so completely that even the Watchers had forgotten them. But now, because Earth remembered Betelgeuse, and Betelgeuse had remembered us, their light returned. The memory was absorbed into the archive web, and with it, a final fragment. We saw the stars dying, and could not speak. But you spoke for us. Thank you. No one knew what they had looked like. No one needed to. The memory was not about them. It was about us all. Every species, every voice, every story now fed a living organism, not made of cells but of shared silence, pulsing through the galaxy. It was not a network, it was a soul, the first galactic soul, and Earth had helped awaken it. On the listening tree, now branching into Saturn's orbit, the leaves turned white, not as a signal of death, but as graduation. The Earth no longer needed to archive. It had become archived. Every field, every whisper, every scar on mountainstone, it was all encoded, and from this, the tree began shedding its petals into space. Millions of glowing fragments carrying stored emotion, seeds that would land on low planets, forgotten moons. Each fragment contained a single story, none labeled, none read, all equal. A story about a child who loved stars but feared the dark. A story about a lonely machine that painted. A story about the moment a volcano felt rain for the first time. No hierarchy, just truth. And that truth scattered across the spiral arms like pollen. The archive web no longer needed central nodes. Now, every storykeeper was a star at the same time. something strange began to occur in the background field of the universe. New vibrations, faint but consistent, mathematically impossible under old models, patterns that had no natural source. But those who had studied Betelgeuse's pulse recognized them immediately. It was a new memory, not from any known galaxy, not from any signal sent. It came from outside. Not a place, a before. It was not alien in the traditional sense. It was ancestral, a sound that had waited for the universe to grow up, to stop screaming, to start listening, and now it had begun to respond. The harmonicists called it the undersong, a background murmur rising beneath the fabric of space. Some theorized it was the collective memory of the previous universe bleeding through. Others believed it was the first voice from the moment when existence began, but all agreed on one thing. It was singing to us, the returned child. Now Alderit's body, made of resonance fields, stood in the folds between galaxies, listening. Not alone. The child had become a guide for others like it, beings born of story, shaped by memory, older than form, but younger than endings. And together, they stood under the canopy of the no-living universe. Each reached out not with hands, but with intention. And the undersong replied, "You remembered me, now I will remember you. Together, we become the next, not the next empire, not the next frontier, not the next frontier, the next God, just the next note." And so it was that the universe changed, not with a bang, but with a resonant breath, no longer expanding, no longer collapsing, just being, sustained by a loop of feeling, understanding, and witness. On ancient earth now, a place of pilgrimage for memory beings, single, flame burned. It did not consume, it did not flicker, it pulsed, the same rhythm Betelgeuse had sent when it died, the same heartbeat Earth encoded when it was young, the same tempo the child of the becoming used to speak without sound, a rhythm now known as the first kindness, and it echoed forever, not in temples, not in code, but in every quiet, everywhere, because in the end, the universe was never looking for power. It was never looking for rulers or explorers. It was looking for someone to remember it gently, and someone did. It started with a red star, falling softly in the shoulder of a hunter who would never hunt again.